In the 6th year since I was taken back to the Smith family, the whole family was extremely disappointed in me. My parents thought I was not presentable enough, unable to compare with the adopted daughter who was graceful and could stunningly impress everyone around. My elder brothers openly disliked me, their biological sister, worrying that I might bully their other sister out of jealousy. As for that person who had occupied my position for many years, she accused me of plagiarizing her design drafts. The whole family unanimously decided to send me abroad, believing that out of sight, out of mind, they have given up on me, and I am about to give up on them as well. When the design draft I submitted for the competition became the painting that Jenny posted on the social platform the day before, I suddenly felt extremely tired. Public opinion on the internet spreads very quickly. Perhaps someone was fanning the flames behind the scenes. Many netizens knew that a novice fashion designer named Tara had plagiarized the works of the young lady Jenny. I clicked on Jenny's social media account and clearly saw that, just the night before I was about to submit my entry, she updated her status. The caption read, "I've had a little inspiration recently and want to create a clothing brand. Sisters, take a look at these design drafts. Are they okay?" Jenny is a wealthy young lady who loves to share. Her casual daily posts on her social media account have attracted a large number of admirers. Netizens have dubbed her the real young lady of a rich family. To some extent, that's true. Jenny grew up in luxury. Looking back in time, those design drafts were exactly posted on the night before I submitted my entry. At that time, the comments section was filled with nothing but praises, urging when the finished products would be available, and now, there are all comments standing up for Jenny. I'm laughing so hard. Does that thief think that our Jenny is some unknown person? She has hundreds of thousands of followers. How dare she? They both have the surname Smith. Why is there such a big difference between them? Stop trying to gain attention. That Tara person can't even hold a candle to our Jenny. Does that thief have an account? I really can't swallow this anger. The official side has already returned my submission, making it clear that plagiarized works will not be allowed to participate in the competition. If I hadn't drawn it with my own hands, I would have believed that I was a thief too. Tara, aren't you ashamed enough? Charles Smith, who had just entered the door, looked at me angrily. You've been targeting Jenny in every way these past few years. This time, you even directly stole her design draft. How could there be someone as morally corrupt as you in our Smith family? Charles is, so to speak, my second elder brother by blood. He is the closest to Jenny. Since the day I came back, he has firmly stood on his sister's side. He was afraid that my return would make Jenny feel awkward and that she would have a burden in her heart. Jenny symbolically tried to stop Charles and said softly in a gentle tone, "Second brother, forget it." Tara probably just had a moment of confusion. If I had known she was going to use the design draft for the competition, I wouldn't have posted it online. Now she's being scolded by so many people because of it. Although she said that, during these days when the public opinion was spreading, she didn't delete that status. As Jenny spoke, her eyes turned red, and then she covered her chest and began to breathe rapidly. Charles anxiously helped her sit down and then turned back to glare at me. "Jenny is still thinking of you even now. You know she's not in good health. Did you deliberately want to upset her? How can you be so vicious?" I watched this show of deep brother-sister affection indifferently. How could I not know that Jenny is in poor health? Just because she was born with a severe heart disease, she has occupied my identity for so many years. Her biological parents, more than 20 years ago, deliberately exchanged us in the hospital. They did this only because they knew that the family giving birth on the same day had a good financial situation. It's very difficult to trace back what happened more than 20 years ago. I don't know how Jenny's biological parents, who are also my adoptive parents, managed to exchange the babies in the hospital. But before I returned to the Smith family, there was indeed an aunt who worked as a nurse in the hospital. However, after she resigned and married far away, I haven't seen her for a long time. My adoptive mother was in very poor health. I learned to take care of her since I was a child. She often complained, "If it weren't for giving birth to you, I wouldn't have these lingering health problems." Who knew it would be a girl? At that time, I didn't know that I wasn't their biological child. I became even more dedicated to taking care of her, doing housework, and studying hard, hoping to get into a good university. My adoptive father wanted a son. His wife's body couldn't bear another child. So he kept a woman outside and urged me to work and support my younger brother. After I graduated from high school, it seemed that everything was destined. My adoptive father died in a car accident, and the hit-and-run driver compensated a sum of money. The woman he had outside came to the door with a pregnant belly, demanding a share of the money. My adoptive mother, despite her poor health, showed her tough side for once. That woman later had an abortion and ran away. After that, my adoptive mother became listless, and her illness became more severe. I sent her to the hospital and took a leave of absence from school to take care of her, but she still passed away half a year later. On the night my adoptive mother passed away, she couldn't speak anymore. I was by her bedside. Suddenly, for a moment, her lips moved, and turbid tears flowed from her eyes. I later realized that the shape of her mouth was saying, "I'm sorry." At the age of 16, I became an orphan and used the inherited money to continue my studies. At the age of 17, a glamorous couple found me and claimed that they were my biological parents. The paternity test was the most direct evidence. It made my more than 10 years of unhappy life due to poverty and the preference for boys over girls seem like a joke, especially when I entered the Smith family and saw Jenny, who was protected behind my two elder brothers. My mother said, "Jenny's biological parents have passed away. She has lived with us for many years, and we can't pursue it any further. She is also innocent. From now on, you two should address each other as sisters." My father said, "Since you're back, change your surname back. However, this matter should not be publicized. We will claim that you are our adopted daughter." At first, they did feel guilty towards me, but as time went by, there was still a difference between me and the daughter who had been doted on and grown up under their watchful eyes. What's more, Jenny has a congenital heart disease, and they are used to giving priority to her in everything. Herman also came back. He walked in wearing a suit, exuding an air of coldness. He is my eldest brother, also by blood. There was a person following behind him, Kevin, Jenny's fiancé. Kevin walked towards his fiancée with a look of distress. "Jenny, what's wrong with you, big brother?" Not only does Tara refuse to apologize, but she also made Jenny this upset. Charles immediately complained. Kevin already disliked me under the influence of his fiancée. Hearing this, he looked at me even more coldly. "What's going on in your Smith family? How can you let an outsider bully the daughter you've raised for more than 10 years? Do you want to do good deeds to the extent that an outsider can ride over you?" Herman glanced at me and directly said, "Tara, apologize." Several pairs of eyes were on me. I met Herman's gaze and said calmly, "I didn't do anything wrong, so I won't apologize." "You still won't admit it, will you?" Charles suddenly stood up and said, "You've always been like this. You're jealous of Jenny in everything. Haven't our parents given you enough? You want to take everything from her. If you didn't steal her design draft, could it be that Jenny stole yours?" Such a defense seemed rather dull. "I've had enough of this in the past 6 years," I said softly. "What if I have a recording of the process of drawing the draft?" As soon as I said this, a trace of panic flashed in Jenny's eyes. But soon she said with a crying voice, "Tara, why did you even copy this?" She seemed very aggrieved, so my words became unimportant again. Herman said, "Since you're so stubborn, I've discussed it with our parents. We'll send you abroad to study for a few years. Reflect on your mistakes outside." The implication of these words was that the whole family intended to give up on me, their unseemly biological daughter and sister. Herman is 28 years old, the eldest son who has placed great expectations on. The words he said, naturally, have the approval of our parents. The parents of the Smith family went on a business trip abroad before and are probably on their way back now. As the fiancé, Kevin still wanted to defend Jenny. He looked at me coldly. "Tara, I don't care what your intentions are. Anyway, in the Smith family, I only recognize Jenny. No matter what you do, it's impossible to catch my attention." I was a bit speechless. I don't know how the rumor that I like Kevin started, probably 3 years ago, when these two were still in a relationship. On Jenny's birthday, Kevin spent a large sum of money to set off a display of blue fireworks for her. It was gorgeous and romantic. At that time, I stared at them for a while. Everyone around was congratulating Jenny, including my two elder brothers. It seemed that no one realized that it was also my birthday that day, because on the day I came back, my biological father said that, in order to avoid external suspicion, my birthday would be celebrated on another day. But in the end, I didn't choose a time, and no one cared. Every year, I still watched Jenny being treated like a star while I was alone. That year, I was just a bit envious of Jenny. Envious that she had relatives and friends who treated her as well as ever regardless of blood relations. I don't know why later someone said that I had a crush on Kevin. He is indeed a young master with excellent looks and family background, but what does that have to do with me? I know my mental state is not very normal, so I don't want to talk at this moment. Perhaps such silence seems like an admission. My parents came back the next day, however, by then, my ID photo for the competition had somehow been leaked. There was a wave of abuse on the internet, and some people even photoshopped my obituary photo. My father was extremely angry. He pointed at me and said, "Tara, what exactly are you dissatisfied with in this family? Do you have to drive your sister away to be satisfied?" Jenny was crying and pleading for me just a few seconds ago, saying that she was willing to move out as long as the family could be harmonious. My mother held her frail and sickly daughter with a heartbroken look. She looked at me with a look of disappointment. "How could I have given birth to someone like you? Hurry up and apologize to your sister." Herman and Charles were standing beside them, both waiting for me to admit my mistake. Strangely enough, I would have been sad because of such treatment a few days ago. But now, my heart suddenly became extremely calm. They are indeed my blood relatives, but they can also be not. I have had mental problems for a while. In the past 2 years, I often rely on sleeping pills to fall asleep, but I can't tell these so-called family members about it, because they think I'm not graceful enough, that I can't give them enough face in big occasions. I'm introverted, I like quietness, and I was brought back too late. I'm not as talented and versatile as Jenny. I only have a hobby of painting. After returning to the Smith family, they hired a teacher for me. And I slowly started to learn. The teacher often praised me for my talent and said that if I had started learning earlier, I would probably be even better. But Jenny can also paint. They don't think those design drafts are mine because Jenny is excellent, and they believe she wouldn't do such a thing. I'm not wrong. After a long silence, I still said this calmly, so my biological father became extremely angry and slapped me. My face turned to the side, and the burning pain spread from my cheek to my heart. But I always felt a sense of detachment, as if I was an outsider. My father said angrily, "Get out of this house." I really left. I heard that the foreign school they were going to arrange for me is not a very famous one. They probably think that with my level, I don't deserve a better one. After leaving the Smith family, I bought a plane ticket and embarked on a journey abroad. I just packed my luggage briefly. When I went out, Jenny stood on the balcony on the second floor, looking at me leisurely. There was no more of that weakness in her expression. In this family, I don't know when this war without gunpowder between her and me started. She has completely different faces in front of me and in front of others. At first, I didn't connect the things to her and also thought about getting along well with her. After all, when I came back, both she and I were just infants and couldn't control our own lives. But after I came back, she got sick more frequently. Some of it was real and some was fake. Sometimes I knew she was pretending, but my parents and elder brothers believed her, and it seemed as if I couldn't tolerate her. In the past 6 years, the guilt of my blood relatives towards me has gradually decreased until it has completely disappeared. I have become a person with ordinary qualifications. A gloomy and vicious personality. Charles once blurted out, "If I had known this would happen, I shouldn't have let our parents bring you back in the first place." That sentence was really shocking. It was after Charles said that sentence that I first realized I was sick. The psychologist told me to make some friends, but I don't have any good friends. During the 4 years of university, my classmates went their separate ways. The friends I used to be close with are now busy with their careers. I'm not important enough for them. I want to leave this family. In fact, as early as last year, I secretly prepared for studying abroad. There is a school I want to go to, and I applied for it on my own, groping my way through the process. They don't know about it. No one thought I could get accepted, and I didn't think so either before. When I started learning to paint, Charles came to persuade me to give up. "Tara, you're different from Jenny. She has been learning to paint since she was a child. No matter how hard you study, you won't be able to reach her level." He didn't know who he heard it from and thought I was just following Jenny's example, but I like painting. I have liked it since I was a child. My adoptive parents thought it was useless and wouldn't let me learn. I secretly learned painting techniques from online bloggers and then practiced in my spare time. Later, I had a fever and did poorly in the final exams. My adoptive father thought it was because I was addicted to painting. He kicked open the door and tore up all the paintings I had hidden under the bed. He didn't actually care that much about my studies because he always said that it was useless for girls to study. He was just drunk that day and looking for an excuse to lose his temper. After a flight of about 10 hours, I landed in London, breathing the air of a foreign country. I only had a 24-inch suitcase by my side. It was clearly a strange place with strange faces everywhere, for some reason. My heart relaxed strangely, and there was even a bit of inappropriate excitement. The moment I landed, finding a house became my top priority. I had already contacted several landlords online and communicated with them in my not-so-fluent English. Fortunately, my English was sufficient for basic communication. In the end, I chose a small villa with a garden. This was the most expensive option among the houses I had viewed. But the landlord had reduced the price significantly due to urgent need for money. It wasn't too far from the school I would attend in the future, and I was lucky to come across this bargain. However, I liked this house so much that I rented it, which was a rare luxury for me. After being taken back to the Smith family, my biological parents had transferred a sum of money to my account at once as compensation. I hadn't touched much of that money in the past few years. I knew that compared with the other 3 children, what I received was very little, but for me, it was a large amount of money. Jenny had once privately showed off that it was just her pocket money for a few months. The medical expenses spent on her every year were even an astronomical figure. After Herman and Charles started working, they would even secretly give her pocket money or buy her some gifts from time to time. I once received a gift from Herman, which he gave me when he came back from a business trip. I was very happy, but later I found out that the few luxury bags I had were the ones that Jenny had picked over. I was used to being poor in spirit. Even though I suddenly learned that my parents were wealthy, I was still cautious and dared not spend money recklessly. Now, the annual tuition fees, rent, and various living costs, plus this sum of money in my other savings, should be enough. I could also take on commissions online to earn money, away from the Smith family and that oppressive atmosphere. I suddenly felt that life had become easier again, after moving into the new house. Although I hadn't bought anything and there were various corners waiting for me to clean up, I faintly felt that the future was looking brighter. Life is a wilderness. The comforting quotes I had read online came to my mind. There were still more than 2 months before the start of the school term. I originally planned to find an opportunity to tell the people in the Smith family, but since they were so eager for me to leave, I thought it was just as good to leave things as they were. On the first day I moved in, I threw away the old mobile phone SIM card I used to have. That number was bound to many apps, but I still threw it away. Without breaking the old, there can be no establishment of the new. I wanted to say goodbye to the past. It was also a good thing that I came early, so I had enough time to decorate the new house. On the second day after I moved in, I got to know an overseas Chinese neighbor. She was a woman in her 50s. She had dyed her hair a fashionable red, and her thick hair was somewhat enviable. She was bright and sunny. If she hadn't mentioned her age later, I wouldn't have been able to tell that she would be in her 60s in a few years. I liked her yard. Looking through the fence, there was a riot of colors, with all kinds of flowers and plants. "Little girl, are you Chinese?" Miss Susan took the initiative to greet me. I felt a bit impolite. In the face of her initiative and kindness, I just nodded woodenly. "Are you an international student?" I nodded again. I was really a bit of a mess. When I first met my neighbor, I didn't get to know her properly. In the evening, Miss Susan and her husband Lee rang the doorbell in front of my yard. They brought a pot of hydrangeas in full bloom. "Little girl, you're new here. Seeing that you seem to like flowers, we're giving you this pot of hydrangeas as a housewarming gift. We hope you'll accept it." That pot of hydrangeas had many flowers of different sizes blooming, and it was particularly beautiful. I finally managed to speak and said, "Thank you," to them. Miss Susan patted her chest in surprise. "My goodness, honey, so you can talk," I thought. At first, she thought I was mute and felt full of pity for me, but soon she said, "It's okay. It's normal for young people to be a bit introverted." That night, I looked at the hydrangeas for a long time and took dozens of photos of them. Miss Susan and Lee were experts in gardening. I gradually got to know Miss Susan better during the process of decorating the house. She was obviously someone who had achieved financial freedom and was living here with her husband. Miss Susan was enthusiastic. She invited me to her home as a guest, introduced me to reliable places to buy furniture, told me about the local customs and practices in London, and also taught me how to decorate the yard and plant some flowers and plants. Some of them were even directly transplanted from their yard. Lee was more reserved, but he also gave people a friendly feeling. He would act as the chef in the kitchen, and Miss Susan would help him. His cooking skills were really good. Tara, it's lucky to have you here. Your Uncle Lee and I often cook too much food. And it would be a waste if we can't finish it. Not long after we got to know each other, the couple both called me Tara. This was a nickname that I had never had during the 6 years I spent with the Smith family, in a foreign land. I received precious kindness. I knew that the couple didn't invite me to dinner really because they had too much food, but out of their euphemistic kindness towards a young girl alone in a foreign country. This couple lacked nothing. They were rich both spiritually and materially. I didn't know what I could do to repay them, but as if they had seen through my thoughts, Miss Susan said, Tara, your Uncle Lee and I rarely have a compatriot living next door. You're very likable, so we're just meddling a bit. Don't have any psychological burden. After I finished decorating my house, my heart also settled down to some extent. However, my sleep was still poor, and I still needed medication to help me. There was about a month left before the start of the school term, and I had to find something to do for myself, so I started painting again. After thinking about it, I bought myself some simple equipment and registered an account on an overseas social media platform. I started live streaming my painting. Sometimes I painted on a digital drawing tablet, and sometimes I used a wooden drawing board. But when using the wooden drawing board, my hand would be on camera. It's just a hand, nothing special. The doctor suggested that I make more friends, but apart from the friends of different generations next door, I didn't have any other real-life friends. There were many groups in the international student community, and I joined them, but so far, I only had online friends. I thought that making friends online was also possible. The only skill I had was painting. At first, I just painted, occasionally. A couple of netizens who entered the live stream said that the live stream was too quiet. So I added some music and continued to paint in silence. After finishing each work, I would record the finished product and update it on my homepage. There were really people watching. I painted a wide variety of things, including sketches, traditional Chinese paintings, watercolor paintings, and fashion design drafts. I even drew some cartoon characters and scenes. Some of them I didn't learn very well and just explored with my limited understanding. I didn't expect that there would really be people watching me paint. More and more viewers poured into the live stream. Some of them were amazed, and some asked questions, but I never answered them verbally. I only replied to them in the comments section of the works using machine-translated English. Forgive my limited English. My school term started. For some reason, Miss Susan and Lee were excited to send me to school. They said that since their only son graduated, they hadn't felt such fun anymore. I didn't understand, but I respected it. In fact, starting school just meant that I had to go out on weekdays, and I would still go home at night. Occasionally, I would even go to their house for a meal. Looking around at my classmates, not all of them had blonde hair and blue eyes. However, there were indeed few Asian students. The only Asian classmate was a Korean. When we opened our mouths, we were both a bit disappointed with each other. International students like to stick together when they're abroad. There's no special reason. It just makes them feel at ease to be with their compatriots. But not all compatriots are reliable. People in the international student groups often wail about meeting scammers, and occasionally there are PDF gossips. When I didn't have classes, I would live stream my painting at home. I didn't know why, but the number of online viewers was getting larger, and later, some people even gave tips. So I turned off the tipping function. It's fine to earn money from taking commissions. All in all, life went on, playing with a few small troubles. The first winter I spent in London came. One morning, I went out to go to class and saw a tall figure standing in front of my neighbor's door. The person pressed the doorbell a few times, but there was no response from inside. After I opened the door, the person turned around. That was the first time I met Lucas, the only son of Ms. Susan and Lee, as they had mentioned. In fact, I didn't recognize him because the photo in Ms. Susan's living room was of her son when he was 1 year old. She said that her son was the cutest at this stage, so she often missed that time. The cute little guy in the photo and the tall man in front of me were completely different. Now I saw a rather handsome Eastern face, and the person's eyes were very nice. Looking down at his body proportions, I suddenly had the feeling that this person would be very suitable as a sketch model. Due to some preconceived ideas, I subconsciously thought he was a compatriot. Hello, "Is there anything I can help you with?" I asked him. The person clearly stated that he was here to visit his parents, so I knew that he was the son of Miss Susan and Lee. Aunt Susan and Uncle Lee recently went to Brighton to visit friends, didn't they tell you? The handsome young man was visibly silent. After a moment, he thanked me, and since I was in a hurry to go to class, I didn't care about where he went after that. 2 days later, Miss Susan invited me to her home for hot pot, and Lucas was at the dinner table. It was only then that we officially got to know each other. I learned that Lucas was busy with the family business and rarely had free time. He came to visit his parents who had retired early and were traveling around the world. "Tara, eat more meat, you're too thin." Aunt Susan picked up some food for me. She also picked up food for her son, but Lucas was a bit ungrateful. He said, "Mom, I can pick up the food myself." So Aunt Susan's enthusiasm was all directed at me again. I ate in silence, and Lucas also ate in silence because his father would also pick up food for his son. After dinner, I went back, and Lucas was sent out to see me off. He smiled and looked at my yard. Before, I thought my parents had bought the house next door too. The styles of the two yards were very similar, but the yard of Miss Susan and Lee was obviously more well organized. Lucas didn't leave immediately. He stayed at his parents' house next door. Almost every morning when I went out, I could see him moving some potted plants in the yard for his parents. Miss Susan said that her son had come at the right time, and now he had a place to use his boundless energy. At the beginning of December, it was a weekend. In the evening, I planned to go out and stock up on some supplies. Miss Susan seemed unable to stand her son being idle. She slapped Lucas on the shoulder. "Tara, it's getting dark. It's not safe for you to go out alone. Lucas is free, let him drive you." I couldn't decline, and Lucas seemed like he had been hired just for this in London. When his mother told him to do it, he did. He drove me to the mall. Most of the time on the way, we were silent, but occasionally he would say a few words to me, such as asking about my school and studies, a bit like an elder whom I hadn't seen for a long time. Lucas also bought some things. When checking out, he generously offered to pay for my items as well. I didn't want that. I snatched my goods back from his hand and paid for them myself. He looked at me with a helpless expression. On the way back, there was a section of the road that was rather remote. Lucas drove a bit slower. At a certain moment, I suddenly said, "Stop for a moment." The car slowly stopped. I opened the door and walked a few steps back. I saw a kitten shivering under the streetlight, meowing loudly. There were no other cats of its kind in sight. Lucas also got out of the car and stopped beside me, quietly looking at the kitten that obviously hadn't opened its eyes yet. We both knew one thing: if we did nothing, this little kitten would die on this winter night. Not long after getting back in the car, snowflakes suddenly started to fall outside. The dirty kitten in my arms seemed to fall asleep in the warmth. It was so dirty that I couldn't even tell its color. On the night of the first snow in London, Lucas and I found a kitten. It is a great challenge to raise a kitten. The doctor at the pet hospital told us that it was healthy. After we wiped it clean, we found that it was a long-haired calico cat. However, a kitten that hasn't opened its eyes yet needs to be fed milk regularly. I took it back to my own home and set an alarm clock to get up and feed it. Lucas originally wanted to take it back to his home, but he didn't live in London for a long time, and he was also past the age of impulsively getting a pet and leaving his parents to take care of it. He stayed in London for a longer time. When I was at school, I would entrust the cat to him. Lucas said that we found it together, so he should be responsible for it. In fact, I was very worried that I couldn't raise it alive, because I had never really raised anything successfully, and I couldn't even take good care of myself. But it seemed that fate began to favor me. The kitten we picked up started to open its eyes on the third day after it came to me, and its meows became louder and louder. Miss Susan said that she thought we had picked up a mouse that night. I named it Snow because we found it on the night of the first snow. Because of raising the cat, my contact with Lucas increased. First, we added each other's contact information, then, he would enter my small villa. Sometimes, he not only came to see the cat but also brought things to me on behalf of his parents. I would occasionally stare at him and think that the genes of Miss Susan and Lee had perfectly combined in him. Until one day, when Lucas was playing with the cat in his arms, he suddenly turned his head and looked at me. "Tara, why have you been staring at me?" He was strange, just like his parents, and called me Tara. I expressed my inner thoughts. "You are very good looking, and I want to invite you to be my model." Lucas knew my major, and his expression was a bit subtle when he heard this. A nude model. It doesn't need to be completely nude. He let out a sigh of relief, looking somewhat relieved. Sure. I was taken aback for a moment. But don't you want to discuss the payment with me first? Being a figure model is very tiring, Lucas said. I can do it for free. I knew that he wasn't short of money. I thought for a while and said to him, then forget it. I can't ask for someone's time without paying for it. At my request, Lucas finally accepted the payment. On a weekend, Lucas came to my studio, at my request. He took off his shirt and slowly unbuckled his belt, his strong muscles combined with his natural body proportions. And he fully met the standards of being a model. I turned on the live stream, and the camera was only focused on my wooden drawing board. During the long painting process, I once asked Lucas to adjust his pose or take a rest, and our conversation was also recorded in the live stream. The viewers in the live stream knew my nationality for the first time, and we communicated in Chinese. The music in the studio was soothing, and my model was a pleasure to look at. When it was time to draw the face, I turned off the live stream. Lucas obviously noticed this too, and he chuckled. Why did you turn off the live stream? I said, to protect the model's privacy. He laughed again, with his eyes and eyebrows curving. You've already seen the portrait of my body, but you won't show my face. I nodded. After all, Lucas wasn't a professional figure model. After this painting was completed, I didn't update it on my homepage, although many people were urging me to show it before Christmas. Lucas returned to his home country. He gave me a Christmas gift in advance, which was a diamond bracelet, but I didn't prepare a gift for you. I was a bit stunned. It doesn't matter. There's no need to be so reciprocal, he said. Lucas suddenly appeared in my life like this and then suddenly returned to his own life. When he left, Snow had been picked up for almost a month and was like a fluffy ball. I still got along well with my neighbors next door. When I was at school, I entrusted Snow to Miss Susan as if sending it to a nursery. In fact, my contact with Lucas didn't stop. He would send messages from time to ask about Snow's growth. I sent him photos and videos, and I finally thought of how I could express my gratitude to Miss Susan and Lee. I proposed to design a set of clothes for them, probably because I was a design major. They readily agreed to give me this opportunity to practice, so I took the time to measure their body parameters. While measuring, my kitten meowed beside me, so I also made a sweater for it. It was very simple and only took half a day to make. My life was peaceful with a little bit of fun, but the fact that I still couldn't escape group assignments as a postgraduate made me feel a bit hopeless. Before the spring festival, I finished the clothes I designed for Miss Susan and her husband. Miss Susan's was a light cyan embroidered evening dress, and Lee's was a black suit. But the embroidery on the cuffs of the jacket was the same as that on Miss Susan's evening dress. They seemed a bit surprised by my design level. Lee couldn't stop praising them. They cherished this gift and decided to wear the clothes I gave them to celebrate the spring festival on New Year's Eve. Yes, I had the New Year's Eve dinner at their house. However, when we were seated, Lucas rushed over looking tired. He said he came to celebrate the new year, and the whole family should be together. When he learned that the clothes his parents were wearing were designed by me, he was silent for a moment and then turned to look at me. What about mine? I had never thought that he would come during the spring festival, because he seemed to be quite busy usually, and he should have a lot of social engagements during the spring festival. Just like in the Smith family before, where there were many social activities during the spring festival, but they probably really thought I wasn't presentable enough, so they didn't take me to many of those activities. At the dinner table, I picked up a drumstick for Lucas and smiled at him. Happy New Year's Eve. He looked at me for 2 seconds and then accepted my differential treatment as if resigned to it. After dinner, he came to my place to see the cat. Snow arched its back and meowed as it ran to the door to greet us. It had grown a bit more, and the little guy that used to be like a mouse could now even wreck the house. Snow had more black patterns on its body, but its fur was fluffy and extremely cute. Lucas picked up the cat and stroked it in his arms. I took out the measuring tools. Shall I measure your bust, waist, and hips? Lucas was taken aback for a moment. Didn't you say you wanted clothes? After understanding what I meant, Lucas smiled. He put the cat on the ground and leisurely took off his coat and sweater, waiting for me to measure him. I had seen that Lucas had a good figure, but now we were a bit close. He was taller than me, and I could feel his deliberately softened breath above my head. The cat meowed at our feet. It might take some time to make it, I said to him. It doesn't matter. Lucas curved his lips. Thank you for your trouble. He seemed to be in a very good mood. Lucas didn't stay in London for too long, and he returned to his home country again. He complained to me about his parents who were still young but were eager to retire and enjoy life. Before leaving, he left toys for Snow. My schoolwork wasn't really that light, combining it with painting and live streaming in my spare time, as well as raising the cat and plants. My life was very fulfilling, probably because I was no longer depressed. I no longer needed sleeping pills to help me fall asleep. The suit I designed for Lucas was finally finished at the end of April, and I sent him a message. As a result, he came running over during the May Day holiday. The suit I designed for him was actually a bit flashy, but he had a good figure and looked great in it, without making people feel it was out of place. Lucas said he liked my design. My dad said your design is good and he appreciates you. Why don't you go to him for some advice? Lucas gave me a suggestion. I was a bit confused. Don't you know my dad's name? He said a name and told me to look it up online. At first, I thought it sounded familiar. When I looked it up online, I found that Lee, the one next door who liked growing flowers and plants, was an internationally renowned fashion designer and also the founder of a popular brand. I actually always knew that this family of three wasn't short of money. They liked the clothes I made not only because of the design but also because of the human connection between us. Your design is actually more suitable for the high-end luxury route. My dad probably has connections in this regard. It will be much more useful for you to go to him than to explore on your own. Lucas said that connections were meant to be used. He didn't feel at all that his behavior was exploiting his own father. He didn't give me a chance to refuse. He enthusiastically promoted his father's abilities to me and took me next door. I had to look at this middle-aged man who was watering the flowers with a new perspective. Lee was willing to provide me with some convenient help within his power, such as introducing me to his friends and giving me an internship opportunity in a high-end luxury clothing studio. He looked at his son. Lucas, you really think your dad is too idle? Lucas, Dad, you're still at an age when you should be making progress. It's no problem for you to take on a student. Lee told him to go back to the country. Miss Susan was very happy that our relationship had become closer, given some precedents of not recognizing someone's true worth. I asked Lucas, what did Aunt Susan do before? Lucas, she's a businesswoman. I always felt that there was more to her identity as a businesswoman than meets the eye, but it didn't seem to matter. My life became even more fulfilling. Lucas started to come to London more and more frequently. He said he missed the cat. My popularity online seemed to be getting higher and higher, and the number of my followers was constantly increasing. The feeling of being liked is actually very good, but the internet is indeed a place where you can be backlashed by traffic at any time. In the second winter after I came to London, Miss Susan and Lee moved out of the house next door. They had a travel plan, and their next stop was in Switzerland. They gave me the keys and said that if it was convenient for me, I could help take care of their yard. If the timing was right, they would come back to see me. Strangely enough, even though Miss Susan and Lee had left, Lucas still came to London. It was getting cold. I was painting in the house, and Snow was lying at my feet. It had grown into a big cat. Didn't Aunt Susan and Uncle Lee tell you that they moved? I poured Lucas a cup of hot tea to warm him up. They did. He watched me draw a new design on the drawing board. Logically speaking, I should have asked him why he still came to London, but I didn't. Some subtle changes seemed to have unconsciously filled my life, and I didn't know exactly what they were. Lucas cooked a meal next door and invited me to have it. He was also great at cooking. Snow also came over. Cats could roam freely here. I put a positioning device on it. The little guy would go out for a stroll every day and then come back home. Cats from other houses had also come to my yard. Lucas didn't leave immediately. He stayed and cooked meals every day and called me over to eat. He even helped feed the cat when I was busy, until one ordinary day in November, he suddenly said to me, "Tara, happy birthday." For the first time in all those years when my birthday had been forgotten, someone celebrated my birthday for me. Lucas didn't understand why I shed tears after he wished me a happy birthday. He was a bit at a loss, but his hand instinctively reached out to wipe my tears. However, when it touched my cheek, he suddenly froze, but only for a moment. Then he firmly wiped away my tears. "Why are you crying? Did I make you sad? Or did you think of something sad?" he asked. I didn't know how to tell him, and finally I just replied dryly, "I'm just too happy. Thank you." He looked at me suspiciously, and then he still took out the birthday cake he had prepared for me from the refrigerator as planned. I wanted to make the cake for you myself, but I failed. This is the one I bought, he said a bit awkwardly. He specifically turned off the lights, lit the candles, and invited me to sit down and close my eyes to make a wish. My mind was a bit blank, but I still closed my eyes and seriously made a wish. Snow also jumped onto the table and lay beside the cake, staring at the dancing flames. Its tail was fluffy and cute. There was a click sound. I opened my eyes and saw Lucas holding a camera and pointing it at me. "I'll take a couple of photos of you," he said, and the flash lit up again. In the camera, my face was especially bright in the dim light, and next to it were the cute calico cat and my birthday cake. I really liked the composition. I blew out the candles, and Lucas took out the birthday gift he gave me. "A 4-leaf clover-style necklace," he said. "I hope you will always be lucky." In fact, looking back on my previous life, I wasn't really someone favored by fate, but it seemed that since I came to London last year and met Miss Susan's family, my luck had started to change. Lucas put the necklace on me, at such a close distance. There seemed to be some other atmosphere in the room with just the two of us. He looked down at me, hesitating to speak. "Is there something I don't say that you can sense?" he suddenly asked. I looked at him in confusion. Lucas chuckled. "It's nothing." He was a bit strange. Miss Susan and Lee seemed to know my birthday from their son and specifically called to congratulate me. I was very happy. This winter, Lucas came to London several times. At first, he said he wanted to see snow, but later he didn't mention it. He came to my small villa and quietly watched me draw the design drafts. I had the patience because I liked painting. I didn't know why he had the patience. My popularity online seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Some brands contacted me for cooperation and wanted to buy my design drafts. I screened them in the background and found that the studio where I was currently interning was also among them. Lee was skiing in Switzerland at this moment. Judging from Miss Susan's social media updates, I knew they were having a great time. I consulted with this couple. Lee searched for my social media account for the first time and was extremely surprised when he saw some of the drawings and the number of my followers. "Wait a moment, I'll talk to my friends." I didn't know what Lee talked about. A few days later, my supervisor in the studio asked me if I would like to be their designer, not just an intern anymore. Although I hadn't graduated yet, some benefits could be promised in advance and implemented. Obviously, someone had pulled some strings for me. This was the first time I experienced the taste of having privilege on myself. Miss Susan told me, "Tara, there's nothing absolutely fair in this world, but in many cases, we are willing to make exceptions for talented people, and you deserve this kind of preferential treatment." Later, I learned that Miss Susan and Lee specifically wore the clothes I designed to meet their friends, that is, the big boss of the studio I was in, and introduced me in detail, thus securing this opportunity for me. The preferential treatment I received was partly due to their recognition of my talent and partly due to the influence of this couple. We weren't related by blood, but Miss Susan said that I deserved the preferential treatment. I have my own independent office and an assistant. Those design drafts that I could only talk about on paper in the past are constantly becoming real products. When I graduated, Lucas came, holding a bouquet of flowers. Miss Susan and Lee also came. They accompanied me to take a set of graduation photos. In the photos, the four of us stood together, looking like a family. "You're so beautiful, Tara," Miss Susan praised me. "I've seen your graduation project. It's as beautiful as you are. Happy graduation." Lee was still as taciturn as ever. However, after attending my graduation ceremony, they left again. Only Lucas stayed. He seemed to be quite idle, busying himself with pruning the plants in the 2 yards and grooming the cat every day. One day, a model I knew gave me a ride to my doorstep. Lucas was standing in the yard, holding the cat and looking at me. The feeling at that moment was a bit subtle. In fact, that subtle feeling had emerged earlier. Since Snow was being raised by me, it was only natural that I was its mother. But one day later, I heard Lucas referring to himself as its father. At the moment, he was holding the cat and looking at me silently, somewhat like waiting for me to say something. After a while, I said, "My colleague just gave me a ride on his way back." While stroking the cat, Lucas said, "My dad's car is just gathering dust there. You can drive it when you go to work. The car key is among the bunch of keys my mom gave you." No need. Lee would probably get angry again if he knew his son was giving away his things like this. He walked around my yard, fed Snow some cat treats, and finally asked me, "Do you like men with European features?" I shook my head. "What about men with Asian features?" I shook my head again. "Lucas, you don't mean, you like girls, do you?" I held a drawing board and did a sketch of Snow. It was in an embrace, and that embrace belonged to Lucas. Lucas sat down beside me quietly. After I finished drawing, he said, "You've been avoiding the topic." He had seen through my thoughts. I could no longer pretend not to know his feelings. "Lucas, but you don't fully understand me." He didn't know how bad I really was, being introverted and sensitive. It was tiring to get along with someone as taciturn as me. How could I be worthy of being liked? "Then you should give me this chance." He looked straight into my eyes. "I like you, how about you?" Before I could answer, he added, "You can reject me, but I think you at least have some affection for me. I won't give up." Before this confession today, he had made a lot of probe, including gradually entering my private space and interfering with my not-so-healthy eating habits. I indulged him. But at this moment, I still felt a bit at a loss. I was afraid that our relationship would gradually turn sour, but Lucas took my hand and said, "Being together, loving each other is enough. Whether we're suitable for each other is a problem for later. No one is born a perfect match." So on this day, he became my boyfriend and even gave me a kiss. In the second summer after I came to London, the son of my neighbor became my boyfriend. Lucas would come to London once a month and stay for about a week, and then go back to his home country under the urging of his subordinates. I don't know why, but suddenly a lot of Chinese comments flooded under my account, or English comments with obvious signs of machine translation. They were from Chinese netizens. They were frantically asking in the comments section what my relationship with Jenny was. Jenny. This name unexpectedly appeared in my sight again. After operating this overseas account for about 2 years, I gained a lot of followers, especially after the official account of my current studio recognized my identity. I have become a genuine fashion designer with real products and am also preparing for an international fashion design competition. After looking into it, I learned that probably since last year, some Chinese netizens would edit the content of my live stream and post it on domestic social platforms with the push of various traffic. Some individual netizens noticed something was wrong. I would leave my signature on each of my works, which was various artistic interpretations of the letter T. Netizens would even search for this T in my works as if looking for faults every time. More than 2 years ago, those design drafts that I intended to submit for the competition also had my signature on them. Unfortunately, Jenny didn't notice it, and neither did the netizens at that time. I don't know who was the first to discover this strange coincidence, but anyway, it has now spread on domestic social platforms. Some people guessed that the person behind this account was their Princess Jenny, but they were quickly proven wrong because Jenny had always been in China. Lucas came, and he was quite concerned about my online reputation. First, he hugged me, and then he looked down and asked, "Your surname is Smith, and the one in China also has the surname Smith. Are you convenient to introduce your family to me now?" For the first time in such a long time, I was finally able to tell him about the melodramatic life I had in the past 20-something years in a calm tone. Lucas' concept of family education was obviously different. After listening, he was silent for a long time and then continued to hug me. "Do you still have the evidence of your previous creations?" Lucas touched my face and said softly, "Why are you so soft-tempered? You didn't even make a sound when you were bullied like that. Tara, you're a designer, and your reputation is very important. I think you need to clear your name." He said I was a pushover. He even poked my face and said with a smile, "It's really soft." I gave him a glare. He was happy. Those previous design drawings had already become the first batch of products of the brand founded by Jenny. In fact, I had seen those photos. To be honest, the real products were different from my designs, and I didn't pay attention to them after that. I thought about it, organized the screen recordings that had always been saved in my computer and my previous manuscripts. I updated a status and posted it. Then I updated my name on my homepage, Tara. As for the truth, let them think about it. However, what was a bit unexpected was that I don't know who revealed the gossip that the Smith family had originally kept secret on the domestic platform, that is, the matter of my identity and Jenny's. It was written from a third-person perspective without naming names, but it spread like wildfire. In fact, not everyone in their circle is stupid. How could someone adopt a teenage child for no reason? They used to think I was the illegitimate daughter of the Smith family. They never expected that this was a melodramatic drama of the real and fake wealthy daughters. One day, when I came out of the studio, I suddenly heard someone calling my name in Chinese. I turned around and saw a face that made me feel as if I had been separated from the world for a long time within my field of vision. Herman. I didn't know much about his recent situation, but I knew that he got married last year. Herman came closer. He was alone. The look in his eyes when he looked at me was filled with a complexity that perhaps he couldn't even understand himself. You were really hard to find, he said to me. Compared with the Tara of more than 2 years ago, the Tara of today is like a completely different person. I'm aware of my changes. I don't know how Herman sees me. They originally planned to send me to an ordinary university to get rid of me. But I went to a world-renowned design school and now I have become a somewhat famous designer. Did you ask someone to reveal Jenny's identity? He asked me. Is that all you want to say? I was a bit confused about the purpose of his long journey here. Herman paused. He said, Jenny had a heart attack and was hospitalized because of this matter. It's very serious. Kevin's parents were already dissatisfied with her. Now that her identity has been revealed, they are clamoring for the engagement to be called off. The shares of the Smith family have also dropped for a few days, and our parents are so angry that they are resting at home. Is this what you wanted to see? So he came to seek justice for Jenny. You kept Jenny's identity a secret. It's actually a case of marriage fraud. Isn't it normal for the other party to call off the engagement? Herman said. You're also a member of the Smith family. We're all in this together. I can be not. I remember my household registration is independent, I said softly. You are the real family. Herman stopped and looked at me. After a long while, I heard him say, we didn't know that you had already applied for a good school before. You never mentioned that you wanted to study abroad. So what if I had mentioned it? They wouldn't have believed that I could get accepted anyway. They would just think I was daydreaming. You left home without a word, and we couldn't get in touch with you. I corrected him. I was kicked out. Herman was taken aback and then continued. Then you didn't send any news for more than 2 years, and we couldn't find you anywhere. I actually heard Charles say to you before that it would have been better if they hadn't brought me back. I said calmly, as you wished. Isn't that good? Herman's face finally turned a bit pale. He didn't expect that I had heard their conversation. That was actually something that happened after Jenny had a heart attack. I can't even remember what it was for. Jenny cried and fell down clutching her chest, and the whole family was in a panic as they sent her to the hospital. I was scolded severely, but I always remembered this sentence that Charles said later, and Herman didn't refute it at that time, about the design drafts. Herman finally brought it up. Since you didn't pursue it at that time, why are you posting it now? I was wrongly accused after having my things stolen. You're asking me why I want to clarify the truth, I retorted. I didn't mean that. At that time, I interrupted him again. Don't talk about that time, because you all believed Jenny's nonsense. Of course you couldn't believe that she would do something like stealing things from my room. Even if I showed the evidence, you would say I made it up. I want to post it now. What right do you have to interfere with me? It was her fault in this matter. But she's in the hospital now and can't stand any stimulation. What does that have to do with me? I said indifferently. Tara. At this moment, another familiar voice sounded. Lucas came to pick me up from work. He naturally put his arm around my shoulder and looked at the person in front of us as usual. Mr. Smith, I've heard a lot about you. Who are you? I'm Tara's boyfriend, Lucas. He introduced himself like this. Herman sized up Lucas, frowned, and after a moment, said, Lee looks a bit familiar. Where have we met before? Lucas, is that so? I don't have any impression, he said. We're going home now, Mr. Herman. I'm sure you have a lot of family matters to deal with recently. Don't bother my girlfriend if there's nothing important. If anyone suffers from the recent public opinion storm, they deserve it. Don't you think so? Lucas put his arm around me and we left. I asked him softly. Was it you who asked someone to write that novel about the real and fake wealthy daughters? Lucas, what asking someone to write? I wrote it myself and asked someone to post it. The writing was quite good. I don't know when Miss Susan and Lee learned about these things. They came back to the house next door. Miss Susan looked at me with pity. Tara, it doesn't matter. We can also be your family. For the more than 20 years I had been adrift before, I seemed to have always been alone. Only now did I feel a sense of stability. However, after this couple came back to live for a few days, Lucas instead stayed at my place. His parents didn't care about him at all. Miss Susan even rolled her eyes and said, I've long seen that this kid has some motives. I've never seen him being so filial and coming to visit his parents every now and then before. Lucas was wearing a white vest, curled up on my lazy sofa, stroking the cat. His slender index finger was teasing Snow's whiskers one after another. The cat got angry and pretended to bite him, but it didn't really bite. Then it ran away, round and chubby with short legs. Lucas laughed. This little chubby girl. The cat would be even angrier if it could understand. He looked at me and then opened his arms. Do you want to come and have a hug? The atmosphere and the light smile on his face were too tempting, so I sat in his arms. Lucas reached out and weighed me. I asked him, have I gained weight too? No, you're too light. He said I was different from the cat. You'd better go back and live there. This isn't appropriate. I tried to persuade him. Lucas picked up his phone and I didn't know what he was typing. What are you doing? I'm sending a message to my mom, telling them to go back and live in Switzerland. My girlfriend is feeling embarrassed. I punched him. The matter of the Smith family is far from over. Herman didn't leave London. After stopping me at the door of the studio again, he asked me to go back with him. I was silent for a while and then said, my work is here. What would I do if I went back with you? Why are you working here when you could be a proper young lady of a wealthy family? If a young lady of a wealthy family doesn't have to do anything, why did Jenny steal my design drafts to start a fashion brand? I was much more articulate than before, but I took a look at her brand. I guess she hasn't made much money in the past 2 years, right, Tara? Herman's patience ran out, but he quickly calmed down. You go back with me first. I'll ask Jenny to apologize to you. Anyway, our parents have raised you for a few years, and your living expenses weren't that little, were they? Mom hasn't been feeling well recently, and she wants to see you. At this point, I raised my eyes again and said, did you forget that in my freshman year of university? Jenny said her necklace was missing, and it was found in my room. After that, Mom said she would stop my living expenses, and it was never restored. Herman clearly remembered this matter. He was stunned. It was never restored, but he quickly added, but Jenny's necklace was indeed in your room at that time. His voice trailed off at the end, because the truth about the design drafts was revealed after more than 2 years. Jenny's character had a flaw in his heart. Since she could steal the design drafts and wrongly accuse others, why couldn't she frame me for stealing her things? Many things can't stand scrutiny, and back then, when I cried and said I didn't know how the thing got into my room, no one believed me. In comparison, the money invested in the 3 of you every year is far more than what was spent on me. If you really have an issue with it, go ahead and sue me to get it back. I knew that the Smith family would never sue me. They seemed to care a lot about their reputation. Herman finally went back this time and didn't harass me anymore. I was busy participating in the competition with my team. It was a really busy time, but fortunately, the result was worth it. After winning that award, I truly began to make a name for myself in the fashion industry. Miss Susan and Lee went on a trip again. They told me to enjoy my relationship and not have any psychological burden. Lucas lazily leaned against my doorstep to see his parents off, showing a bit of interest in their itinerary like a neighbor watching the fun and gossiping. Time passed steadily. Another spring festival came, and Lucas, wearing a red down jacket and looking festive, dragged his suitcase to accompany me to celebrate the new year. His parents were in Switzerland this year. This dutiful son said, I came because I thought you missed me. My parents don't miss me anyway. This was a New Year's Eve just for the 2 of us. We snuggled on the sofa, watching the recorded Spring Festival Gala on TV with the cat. Due to the time difference, it was already the first day of the Lunar New Year in China. In fact, such a life was really nice. However, there was never a break in the commotion from the Smith family. One day later, someone called me. Tara, do you really not want to come home? It was my mother's voice. Strangely enough, I have 2 pairs of parents in my life. But I have only felt the tolerance of parents towards their children from Miss Susan. I have my own work and life. What would I do if I went back? Your eldest brother told me that you've suffered grievances these past few years. If you come home, your parents will make it up to you. Okay, I remained polite. No, thank you. Could it be that you plan to never have any contact with the whole family for the rest of your life? My always elegant biological mother's voice was choked with sobs. You were born by me. Can you really deny this blood relationship? Her words made me recall the 6 years of my previous life once again. I did live a life of luxury, but compared with the other 3 children, the gap was huge. I also wondered that since they thought I wasn't worthy of this wealthy family, why did they bring me back? Why didn't they want to give me even a bit of tolerance and trust? It would be better if I wasn't your child, I murmured subconsciously. What did you say? The person on the other end of the phone exclaimed in shock, nothing, that's it, don't contact me if there's nothing important. I hung up the phone. I also started to do live streams less frequently. One night later, I received another call from China, and the voice on the other end surprised me a bit. It was Charles. He seemed to be drunk and was asking me emotionally on the phone if I wanted to see this family fall apart. Saying that Jenny had been jilted, and asking if I was satisfied. He had the best relationship with this younger sister. I only said one thing. Do you remember that girl you liked the year you graduated from university? In fact, she also liked you back then. She asked Jenny to pass a love letter to you, and I saw her tear it up. I hung up the phone after saying this, after I won several design competition awards. Lucas and I planned for the future. He said that I could start my own brand. Just like his father did in the past. I don't have the money. The reality was as harsh as ever. I do, he said. I thought that if I took his money, the nature of things would change. But Lucas said, how many entrepreneurs truly start from scratch? If you don't believe me, go ask my dad. He sold himself to my mom back then because he didn't have the money to start a business. Lee didn't know that his son was speaking ill of him behind his back again. The truth was that Lee insisted on starting a business. His parents were afraid that he would squander the family fortune and end up unmarried, so they required him to get married first before starting his career. So Lee married his then girlfriend, that is, Miss Susan. Later, I signed a contract with Lucas. As my investor, he would own 20% of the shares of my original brand. At that time, I decided to return to China to start my own business. However, not long after I returned to China, Lucas proposed to me. After we got the marriage certificate, the money he invested in me seemed to become a bit ambiguous, because I was too busy. The wedding was postponed to the next year, but Lucas was eager to get married, so we got the certificate first. I was already 27 years old at this time, and he was 3 years older than me, about to celebrate his 30th birthday. He said that a man's market value would decline when he turned 30 and asked me to feel sorry for him. After Miss Susan and Lee learned about our marriage, they first criticized us for not discussing it with the family, and then they specially came back to China to give us wedding gifts. They really became my mom and dad. A few years passed in a flash. I still remember the scene when I first met Miss Susan. She was bright, kind, elegant, and cheerful. She took my hand and asked me to think carefully about my relationship with my biological family. After all, it was up to me to decide whether to invite them to the wedding or not. But she was worried that I would be criticized by others. Before I could figure it out, I met the people from the Smith family. It was a banquet, and Lucas took me to attend it. He was always worried about me facing these people alone and afraid that I would suffer losses, so he took me to learn some social skills first. I met my biological parents and Herman and his wife at the banquet. Tara. Herman recognized me first. Upon hearing my name, the parents of the Smith family also stopped in their tracks. I hadn't seen these parents for more than 4 years. I thought I had probably changed a lot in their eyes. Herman said, I saw that you registered a domestic social media account before, and I guessed that you were going to return to China. Speaking of which, after I registered a domestic account, there were still many people who came to the comments section and sent private messages asking about my relationship with the Smith family. Gossipers were everywhere. My mother looked at me, probably feeling a bit strange. Her tone was also different from before. Tara, after all this time, still not planning to go home and take a look? No, I'm quite busy, I said indifferently. My father, who slapped me and kicked me out of the house back then, looked uncomfortable. He was dissatisfied with my attitude, but he wanted to say something and finally didn't. I thought about it and introduced Lucas to them. This is my husband, Lucas. You're married. They said this in unison. My father finally spoke. For such an important matter as marriage, you didn't discuss it with the family at all. Isn't that too outrageous, Uncle? Lucas smiled and said, it's my fault. I heard that your family only recognizes one daughter, and my parents can't wait to have another girl in the family, so they asked me to bring her home quickly. Please forgive me. He was always good at being sarcastic, but they seemed to know Lucas's identity as well. Lucas mainly took over Ms. Susan's family business. Their family runs a chain of 5-star hotels. Lucas was much richer than I had imagined. On the night we got the marriage certificate, He told me the password of the family safe. Tara, they don't want you, but our family treasures you. Don't be sad, we have our own family now. The next time I went back to the Smith family, it was because Herman said that my mother was ill. I went back to take a look and saw Charles at the door. I was about to step past him. Tara, didn't you see me? Charles spoke. I saw you. I continued to walk inside. Charles still had that hot temper. He suddenly stood in front of me. I have something to ask you. Ask. He was taken aback for a moment, probably still surprised by my attitude. You clearly saw Jenny tear up the letter back then. Why didn't you tell me? There was a flash of unwillingness in his eyes. I thought he had probably confronted Jenny, the younger sister he had truly loved before, had blocked his chance at love, and it couldn't be undone. The girl he liked was married. If I had told you, would you have believed me? I retorted. Charles was silent. After a while, his lips moved, but he didn't say anything. I went to take a look at my biological mother lying in bed. She was indeed haggard. The servants in the house whispered privately that Mrs. Smith, who doted on her daughter, had had a quarrel with Jenny. Tara, my mother opened her eyes and looked at me. Her voice was filled with weariness. We didn't know you were married. We didn't prepare a dowry before. The card on the table is a compensation from your father and me. Consider it a token of our affection. No need. I will send you an invitation when I hold the wedding. I always felt that this belated compensation and family affection had lost some of their essence. Miss Susan, my mother-in-law, said that it was better to do some superficial things. When I went out, I heard Charles complaining to Herman somewhat resentfully. She doesn't even call me second brother now. After that, I heard that Jenny's health had deteriorated so much that she had to live in a nursing home. She used to like to pretend to have a heartache. Probably she never expected that now she didn't need to pretend anymore. But she was still lucky. The Smith family was still willing to support her with high medical expenses. Her former fiancé had also gotten married. Charles, the brother who had always been used as a pawn by her, finally saw the truth behind some of the pretenses. Why did Jenny ruin his chance at love? Because she didn't allow there to be any woman in the family who was more favored than her. Since she knew that Charles truly liked that girl, she couldn't let that relationship succeed. As for Herman, his wife was a good match in terms of family background, introduced by the elders in the family, and she couldn't stop it. Charles was in a slump for a while. He even went to that girl in a drunken fit to ask if she had ever liked him and begged her to divorce and be with him, and was beaten up by her husband. Once you miss something, it's gone. That girl had also had a proper relationship and gotten married. The more Charles couldn't let go, the more this matter stuck in his throat, so his relationship as siblings with Jenny also broke down. I learned this from Herman's wife. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but anyway, she paid me to design a dress for her. I had to be patient with customers. To be honest, when I married your brother, I didn't like Jenny either. She would always say she wasn't feeling well and call your brother, but I didn't want to argue with a sister-in-law who had a heart condition. Later, I found out that she wasn't your biological sister. Well, she tugged at the corner of her mouth. If I had known that earlier, I wouldn't have married your brother. After all, looking at it now, it makes people feel disgusted to see her acting like a teenager and being coquettish at the age of 27. It seems that she has an ambiguous relationship with the men in your family. I just listened and didn't make any comments. I originally planned to have a baby last year, but because of her, I'll observe for a while. My sister-in-law took a sip of coffee and said softly, the doctor said that without a heart transplant, she has at most 2 years to live. For some people, they will never be able to get a heart until they die. Tara, do you still hate them? She asked me tentatively. Not knowing if it was out of her own curiosity or on behalf of Herman, I smiled and shook my head. No, it doesn't matter anymore. They are no longer important to me. I have a new family. When I got home, Lucas was already busy in the kitchen wearing an apron. I walked over and hugged him from behind to recharge. Why are you cooking by yourself? I asked him. Lucas, I learned a few new dishes recently. Let you have a taste. He said casually. I tell you, all my friends who are married at a young age keep their wives' hearts through their cooking. I can't lose to them. I snuggled up to him. You're great even if you can't cook. Snow, which came back to China with us, squatted at our feet meowing as a chubby cat, as if scolding me for not hugging it first when I got home. Meow. I picked it up. It was a plump little girl. Lucas turned around and kissed me. Be good, go and wait over there. It'll be ready soon. The setting sun shone in through the window, and the orange-red sunset made my little cat look a different color. It was a warm feeling. Extra story from Mrs. Smith's perspective. I never imagined that my daughter, who was born with a heart disease and had been carefully nurtured and raised, was actually someone else's child. My biological daughter was maliciously exchanged by her parents. However, an innocent child is blameless. I had poured my love into her for 17 years. And it was difficult to let go. If she left the Smith family, with her physical condition, she wouldn't last long, so our whole family decided to keep Jenny. For my biological daughter who had just come back, I wanted to feel sorry for her, but she was so unfamiliar to me. I still tried my best to compensate her materially, but after all, she grew up outside and had picked up too many bad habits, such as lying, stealing, and being jealous. I decided to teach her a lesson and stopped her living expenses. I only planned to stop it for 3 months, but for some reason, I forgot about it. At first, when Tara ran away from home, I didn't care. Half a month later, I discussed with my husband that if she admitted her mistake, we would bring her back, but her phone couldn't be reached. I thought she was still angry. Another month passed, and we still couldn't get in touch with her. I started to worry. Jenny said that maybe Tara was still angry. 3 months later, we finally realized that something was wrong. We searched all the places she might go and all the people she might contact, but we found nothing. Our biological daughter, whom we had finally recovered, was missing. I wanted to call the police, but it would be bad for our family's reputation, so I held back. After that, it seemed that having no news became good news. I used to think that Tara's return made our family restless. But it seemed that after she left, more troublesome things occurred. Herman's wedding was approaching, and I had to put this matter aside for the time being. However, this delay lasted until 2 years later, and the matter of Tara stealing Jenny's design drafts at the beginning ushered in a reversal. Herman became suspicious and asked a lot of questions. Jenny couldn't deny it, and we finally confirmed that we had wrongly blamed Tara before, but immediately after that, the truth about Jenny and Tara's identities was exposed online. The parents of Kevin demanded to call off the engagement, and Jenny had a heart attack and was sent to the hospital. That biological daughter whom we once looked down upon had managed to build her own career alone outside. But when we met again, I could tell that she had changed. She got married, and that man didn't bring her home for me and her father to see. I truly felt that she had separated from this family. After that, I heard her calling others Dad and Mom affectionately, but I don't know how long it has been since she last called me. Jenny's eyes turned red as she spoke, and then she covered her chest and began to breathe rapidly, but I still remember the joy of finding her and getting her back that year. I truly feel regretful, but there's nothing I can do about it. We can't go back to the past. Side story from Herman's perspective. I've always thought that as the eldest son in the family, I've been fair to my younger siblings. Since Jenny has poor health, the whole family has subconsciously favored her a bit more. This has been our habit all along. I forgot that Tara didn't get anything that she should have originally received. Later, I tried to put myself in her shoes and found that as a young lady of the Smith family and as my own sister, she always seemed to receive nothing but blame. I got married and have a good relationship with my wife, but she always gets angry with me because of Jenny. After learning that Jenny wasn't my biological sister and that we had driven our biological sister away for her sake, she called our whole family crazy and almost divorced me. But the mistake has already been made. Tara is much more excellent than we imagined. Jenny could also recuperate at home, but now it's the best for the whole family that she lives in a nursing home. Whether she can get a heart or not depends on her luck. Our family is in pieces. There are her reasons for it, and we also made mistakes. After Tara got married, it's even more impossible for her to come back. Her husband can give her more than we can. Charles later told me, should we have let Jenny move out when we brought Tara back? This sentence has a similar meaning to what he said before, that we shouldn't have brought Tara back, but this is probably the right thing to do. There should be a distinction between close and distant relationships. And we got things upside down. Dad later discussed with me about giving Tara some shares. I had no objection, but Tara refused. That's right, she doesn't need them now. Dad still wrote it in his will. I don't know if it's to soothe his conscience or for some other reason. Side story from Lucas's perspective. When I first met Tara, there were broken stars in her eyes. Beautiful, but as if some part of her soul was missing. Later, I accompanied her to piece together her soul, and there were shining stars in her eyes. She doesn't know that she herself is the most dazzling star. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you like this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.